Emotional algebra, where the heart meets the math. What is integral is derivative as you figure out your path. Power plus emotions equals more than you can see. Listening to the wisdom of our
Hey guys, welcome to Emotional Algebra. As you'll see, it's just me. Andrew's taking a little time off. Time-wise, it's about the end of the summer here, and for him and his family, so he's taking a little vacay time and quality time with his family. So I am running the show. We're going to have a discussion today with actually a YouTuber. Has been running a channel for about 10 years and does a lot on gaming. We just met kind of through the internet, through connections, me as a curious YouTube novice and him as an experienced YouTube artist. And in that process, started just talking about what we do. He'd seen some of the episodes, enjoyed the discussions, and some of the content that we talked about really kind of cross-pollinated into saying, hey, why don't you come on and be a guest co-host with me? We'll have some great discussions here and to see where we can take all this. So this is a Pixelated Apollo is how he is known. And also I'll let him introduce himself too a little bit and maybe give any other information you'd like to fill in that I didn't give.
Well, thank you for having me. This is exciting. And I like the term YouTube artist. I'm going to keep that
It's
one.
true.
It's
a
better
work of
than
art.
content creator. I like you. I'm a YouTube artist, you know.
Put that on your LinkedIn profile. Now,
That's
right?
That's right. No, yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And yeah, you pretty much, that was perfect. I've been doing YouTube for over 10 years and never thought I would do this for a career, but life works out that way, and I'm excited to talk.
980,000 followers and counting.
Yeah. It's I never thought I would even. I mean, when I started, it's kind of in the back of your mind, like maybe, but I remember when I reached my first 1,000. And I was thinking, wow, I'm a YouTuber. Like, I've made it, But it's been a lot of fun and something I'm very grateful for.
Very good. So what has been the development of your persona, your personality, even how do you build and create your your YouTube presence versus just your day-to-day? Because when I listen to your episodes, as we've talked about, you don't even sound like you when we're talking, kind of face to face like this. It's like you turn on another voice. So how did all that develop in developing your YouTube persona?
Yeah, if you even watch my first couple videos, you will tell I kind of have this kind of almost like a depressed sounding kind of voice. I'm mumbling. And I think just over the time, the more you do something, you kind of naturally learn presentation skills, I suppose, where that's how I treat it. Is when I make a video, it's like I'm on a stage with a PowerPoint and I'm doing a TED talk or something. There's some days where I really put myself out there. Seeing people respond positively to that will make me be like, oh, this is cool, and build more confidence. I think it was more of a confidence thing. And that's really affected my personal life too, and just how it's shaped me as a person and being more vulnerable, more open. So
how did YouTube, I mean, you'd think a lot of people on YouTube feel like they have to always be on and present their ideal self. They're, like I said, their YouTube persona. And then sometimes they come off the screen and you hear all these stories about so many people who have had YouTube channels who emotionally behind the scenes are a wreck. You say it helped you build your confidence. How would you say that happened?
Well, I think it's just how you approach YouTube as well, because some people do get a little bit of a God complex, a little bit of, you know, it's almost like a split personality in a sense where they just become something totally different. And I want to, and I do my best. I'm not perfect, but I do my best in making sure that whatever I show, when I show myself on a video or I make a video, I'm trying to, it's might be slightly different than how I would talk, with a friend or face to face, but it's still me. So I feel like I don't lose myself in that kind of like YouTube persona.
Hmm. Okay. So you said when you first started out, you felt like you had a more depressed voice and kind of mumbly. So what was your life like growing up? Because I want people to see. I think people like, first of all, a couple issues I want to kind of cover through this, and I want listeners and viewers to look at or consider is, here we're talking to somebody who's been doing YouTube for 10 years. We've heard all kinds of stories. Like I said, often you hear the nightmare stories, like I kind of brought up, how are people behind the scenes? How does YouTube affect their life? Here we're talking to somebody who feels like it has enhanced their life. They make a nice living at it. They've kept their humility, if not more than that. It's helped them to relate to people better. So I guess what I want to look at is let go back in history and kind of tell me about what were some of the issues. How were you when you were younger, and what were some of the issues you had? And when you came to this, how did you mentioned kind of how it built confidence in you over time, but what were some of the challenges that you had growing up and earlier in life that then how you evolved, as you started YouTube in that?
Yeah, I think as a kid I dealt with a lot of anxiety and agoraphobia, health hypochondria. I was a hypochondriac and just so focused on negative thoughts. And even if you look back at my old videos, my username for some of the games I play was Anxiety Boy, which was just kind of me beating myself up of, that was my identity. That's who I was. I'm anxiety. And that and I struggled in college, and that's when I started my YouTube channel. And I was just looking for an outlet to have fun and to kind of escape. So it was always a hobby at the start. And I think what YouTube provided me and has helped me in getting a lot better is doing something challenging and achieving some goals and building confidence. And I think a lot of anxiety issues, it does come from a lack of confidence. What are your thoughts on that?
I think I think you're definitely aware. I think that you said I was anxiety is so present for how so many people to me see themselves is I am depressed, I am anxiety. And what I always want to separate for people is it's not that the person is that, is that that's what they're experiencing. So I think we have to look at, in our diagnostic system, often we will say, or doctors will say, I'm, like I said, I try to separate that as you are depressed, or you are anxious, or you are this. So in that, identifying the separateness of you from that issue, because obviously now you're not anxiety.
Right.
Yet at the time growing up, it's what you knew. And, anxiety boy in your handle is almost like you said, making fun of yourself.
Right.
And I know when I grew up and I didn't have, a lot of confidence, and I had my issues, whether it was my buck teeth or my allergies or being picked on by other people, I often used to make fun of myself consciously before other people could do it. And I felt like I had power over the humor that was going to come at me, which was often sarcasm, as I say, that came at my expense.
Yeah.
And that type of bullying type of humor. So, in that, I think, I guess I'd wonder, did you experience any bullying growing up, or did you fade into the background?
I've more faded in the background. I always struggled with friend circles because I couldn't go out. A lot of times people ask me to go out and do something, and I say no, and they took it personally that I don't like them. So I had a lot of challenges in that way. And it would go through cycles. There was times where it was less prevalent and less of an issue, so I could get out and stuff. But it was always there, and it always lingered. And yeah, I very much agree with the sense of making fun of yourself, which I think is healthy to an extent. But if it becomes so much that it's damaging, yeah, I think that's very true.
I define the difference a lot between sarcasm and humor. Sarcasm is that aggressive kind of biting humor, and humor is just making light of something. I think, for me, I definitely can look back and see my humor was aggressive towards myself. It was sarcastic towards myself. It was demeaning or diminishing, not making a light of something. I think sometimes for people who want to kind of balance out maybe some of their self-professed or self-awareness of their own arrogance and or narcissistic traits, then sometimes doing that kind of softens how that person's presented. But I remember, and I still, I can tell you, I feel a little embarrassed about telling this, but I used to have really buck teeth, as I said, and I used to say, well, I can chew through a tree faster than you. That was how I knew that they were probably looking at my teeth, and psychologically, I'm like, I'm going to take the bite out of what you might say or think about me, pun intended, before you can say it or think it almost. So the interesting thing for me about doing this show is, yes, I get to have this platform to share things I want people to understand. I also recognize I have a great amount of power, and that power that I have to put in a signature on the people who see the show, on the show itself, and in that, on the world. I think a lot of people can get so caught up in their own self that they might not realize the power they have in the eyes of those who watch the show, or the impact it has, and even just the energy that's put out there in that. So I guess I'm wondering, with you through the years, how have you seen your impact on what you're doing and your brand and how you present it? Because I talk about personal brand a lot with people.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see that? And what are some of the comments or feedback that you've gotten from people letting you know you have made a difference in what you're doing while you're walking people through how games are played?
Yeah, no, that is really big for me, because it's very humbling. Because I think you get lost in the YouTube grind, and you're just looking at numbers and you're looking at analytics. And then I'll look in my email and I'll get this very vulnerable and heartfelt email about, they watched me while their mother was going through cancer treatment, and he was just waiting by her side while she was resting and watching a video. And it's just it's very touching. And again, I'm at home every day, I'm working on my computer. You forget that the numbers on the video are people, and it really does matter. And I'm no saint, I'm not perfect, I have made mistakes. I have said rotten things. But I try to always go back and to be a more positive figure, and stand up for what I believe is right. But yeah, that what honestly keeps me going is the the feedback I get from people that are just so vulnerable and so open, and just share so many heartfelt. One of my, and something I'll remember forever, is a 14-year-old kid reached out to me, and he said, I'm struggling with cancer. This is it was tough. He was struggling, and he's like, I just want, can you play this game? And I was like, yeah, I'll make a video, for you. It's no big deal. And it turned out to be one of my most viewed playthroughs ever. And it felt like a meant to be moment. And unfortunately, he passed away before it ended. And it was, and then at the end, we raised, my community, we raised money for, in his name. It was just, it's something that, like, I will forever remember and hold on to. And that's what really gets me to focus on being a positive influence and being somewhere where people can get away from the hardships of the world, even for one video at a time.
So what are some of the things that it's easy to fall into that sense of worship, and you kept humility. So what are some of the feelings you have about some of the other YouTube personalities, and what happens as they've had their tenure in YouTube and they see the fan base built? What do you think happens in those situations with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is true for anyone. I mean, even outside of YouTube, I've met people who've done really interesting things, or like they're in the military, and I've come across very humble people that almost have the right to brag, but yet they choose to be humble, and it's very noble. It's very attractive in the sense that you just connect to them better. And I've had negative experiences with YouTubers who do have that kind of God complex, where they'll kind of talk about other YouTubers and say, are they relevant anymore? Or, I should be getting free things. Why was I not invited to to this event? And it's ugly. And you just kind of naturally just kind of like, that's just not who I want to be. And maybe I'm downplaying, but like, I just make goofy videos online. Like, I'm just, I'm just like everyone else. I'm not anything, special. So I think that's kind of just personal experience, and role models kind of help me with that.
Mm-hmm. So in that process of some of the YouTubers that you've met and that you've worked with, what are some of those feelings when you're interacting with somebody? That how does that affect then your interaction, even in that maybe you're co-playing or doing a video together with them? How does you feel like that affects the whole tone of the video? What do you leave with afterwards, even sometimes, is, because again, I just want people to understand, you've carried yourself well through this whole time. You've built your brand, you maintain that brand. You've been potentially, cross-contaminated by some of these other people you've been with, and yet, you still hold your space and hold your grace. So I guess I'm wondering, what's that emotional process through that?
Well, and again, I have my moments. I
Sure.
don't think I ever I've never gone the route where it's like, oh, look at me, I'm a YouTuber. But I have moments where I'm up my own butt, essentially, and I have to go out and be like, look, this was stupid. I shouldn't have done this. As we are all human, and we make mistakes. But yeah, I mean, I've worked with other YouTubers occasionally, and I enjoy it. I have some YouTubers I have very close friends with, and naturally, yeah, I'm pulled into people that see this as not something, not a celebrity type thing, or like, they're not very much full of themselves, and I don't think I could work with someone like that, because after one video, I don't connect, and
Mhm.
it just feels gross. So I mostly work with people that I really get along with. So it's
Mhm.
only when I go to events where I'm around other YouTubers and I kind of get this vibe. And most YouTubers are very good, but you do get this vibe of kind of this God complex. And I'm sure you've heard, there's been many cases of YouTuber, like you mentioned earlier, YouTubers that have these dark other lives, and it comes out and it's spectacular in the most negative way, of like just blowing up, and all these negative things come out. um do you think YouTube kind of harbors that mindset of, or really social media in general, where you're presenting yourself as someone that you want people to think you are like, but in reality you're not? And is that is that pretty common, or is that more of like almost like a sociopath kind of mentality? Like, and I mean that honestly, like, what is
Mhm.
what is your thoughts on that?
Well, I always talk about our real, feel, and ideal selves, and when we put ourselves out there in a situation like on YouTube and or other public situations, we're often going to try to show our ideal self, and that's the way we often even want to see ourselves. So when people start to believe their own news, then that's where often you get more of a disparity between their ideal, their feel, and their real. And I always say the more distress that somebody is feeling, it's because there's more of a discrepancy because they're real, their feel, and their ideal selves. So I think also we live in that hierarchical culture, that hierarchical world, where when we see people who we feel are getting too far up there hierarchically, we want to tear them down, especially if we don't feel that they have the status that they should. So that's where we often tear our leaders down. We tear our bosses down. We tear our parents down growing up, and therefore, because of the status that is often affiliated with successful YouTubers, we often want to tear them down. Just the episodes that I did on social media, and created the song Social Memia that I had posted, in that I talked about a lot of those issues about comments and how to handle them and how we handle them. And I think that it's about other people's insecurities that then they hide and they project through their sarcasm, their anger, their rage, their hatred. There's all these terms. My daughter was just talking about rage baiting, and that purposeful manipulation of somebody else to see if you can get them basically to respond with rage. Because even though rage is protective, most people intuitively know that rage is hiding something else. While we might see somebody overreact, it's almost becomes a gotcha. So that's where you might have people comment on things because they're having a bad day, they're having a bad month, they feel like they're having a bad life, and they feel that envy and jealousy of something that you have that they want, or they just like people to feel as bad as they do, because the more people feel better when they feel badly about themselves, the more alone they feel. So there's all of those emotional algebra, those variables that go into the equation. And that's why when I did the episode last week, and I think it broke into 2 episodes, I talked about how I handled that situation from the standpoint of not wanting to embarrass or humiliate the person, not wanting to get into a big power struggle and online pissing matches, how so many of those things can do, going to what that person's issue was, which was really likely their own arrogance that they wanted to hide behind and presenting themselves as superior and better. So even as you're talking about YouTube's talking about, was that person even relevant? That's all about arrogance, which is protective too. So I think it's very hard for people, and I think a lot of people who get out in front of people, whether, we talked about the NBA, WNBA, and some of the comments that were made at the All-Star thing. We brought that in too, because I think there's so many people who are not psychologically prepared to be out there in front of people and know how to manage and handle those situations, that their choices, they feel, are often to either become what I call the justified persecutor. In other words, attack and justify their persecution of others based on their feeling of victimization, or they play the learned helplessness role and they just give up and roll over and take it. And that's why what I want to try to teach and propagate is more a healthy assertiveness, a healthy addressing of the issue, not out necessarily in a public place. As I indicated in the video and how I handled the one comment that came my way, which wasn't a harsh comment, it's just arrogant and out of touch, is to message them directly, communicate them directly, because I use that as a teaching moment. So in that vein, have you had those times where you've commented back to people or tried to have some of those discussions rather than just let them throw out a comment? And how do you manage those situations that are just blatant attacks?
Yeah, well, thankfully, 99% of my comments are positive. I think it depends on what you're kind of making videos on. If you're doing politics, you're gonna get a lot more feisty people. So since I'm just doing fun gameplay, but I do occasionally get the negative comment, and what's really strange, and I almost and like you said, hurt people, as the saying
Mhm,
goes.
mhm.
I'll see a negative comment of being is something pretty harsh, like your voice is annoying, or I hate when you do this, and I'll reply, and I'll say something like, "Oh, well, you can just click away," and then they'll reply, "Oh my gosh, I didn't think you would respond. I love watching your videos," and it's really confusing. And I was like, "Well, why did you say that?" So what is the mindset going into that of someone that's it's almost like a cry for help in a sense of I'm going
Mhm.
to say something maybe just for attention, and then when they respond, be happy about it.
Yeah, it's looking for significance. It's seeing somebody that they feel has all these followers, all this power that they feel like in reality you're too important for them. So what do they have to do? They have to try to undermine your sense of confidence, undermine your happiness, undermine your pride in what you do. And there's so much of that that to me it's definitely much more. I don't want to say our world is ripe with it. It's not. It's that yes, there are small segments of society that to me it's kind of like the silent larger minority. I don't want to say majority, but that silent larger minority than we realize, because there are a lot of people that feel hurt out there today. There are a lot of people who feel isolated, who feel alone, who are tuning into to your videos because they want to feel happy. You become their point of happiness for the day
Mm.
because they might not feel like they have other people that they can find happiness with. And that's where a lot of what I want to encourage people to do, and even through the social media song at the end, the whole story at the end was turn off the computer and get out there and see it's a beautiful world. There are beautiful people out there. There's
Mm.
people who are looking to be related to. And because we become more isolated on our computers, because we don't have face-to-face interactions and aren't communicating as much or interacting as much with people face-to-face, and we're doing it through text, we're doing it through social media, we're doing it through drive-bys and through just peeking in on other people's lives. And remember, what are people going to show on social media, on their YouTube channels, on Twitter, and on TV are the brightest sides of them. People don't talk
Right.
about, I went to bed really depressed last night. I woke up feeling like the world was falling down around me. I feel like my relationship with my kids suck. I feel like my wife, is disinterested, or my husband's disinterested in me. They're not going to often put that out there, because when people do, then people often look at them, well, you're just playing the victim. So how do we open up to feel comfortable with our communication with others when we see so much negativity, when put things out there, when we look down on people who might share their honesty, which I see as refreshing if they're willing to receive feedback, because there are a number of people out there who get so caught in the victim role. They are looking for rescuers. They are looking for someone to say, I'm sorry. And that's how they connect, in people justifying, well, you should feel bad. And I think that's another pattern that we have to watch in some of the drama that we see unfold that seems to grab eyes. Yet it doesn't grab hearts. It doesn't hold on to them. It more grabs, haha, look at their life. And so I think as people, we really want to look at what are our motivations for the things we're watching, the things we're saying, the things we're doing, so that we can take personal accountability. So in that, this becomes school. What we're talking about today can be school for the viewers, and school for seeing how and why we respond to things and what we do with things in life, and how we react, and how we really help ourselves through them.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think to circle back, growing up with severe anxiety, I think I'm thankful for it because it has shown that everyone's struggling. Everyone has issues and challenges. And the better that we work together and show empathy and be a helping hand, it's people lose. And I think that's the thing, the internet very much removes that human element out of it. Instead, you see usernames and just text on the stream or a video, and you lose that sense of humanity to where you feel completely confident to just type whatever you want without any consequences, and you don't really see that person hurt either. You kind of just put it out and then they privately hurt, where if you said that to their face, you would instantly recognize their hurt. And yeah, so I think with dealing with negative comments, after doing it for so long, most of the time I don't even think about them. Like, I'll occasionally see them and I just kind of move on. Very rarely do I interact with them, just because it's not that I don't necessarily care, or it's just I just want to focus on the positive. And I feel like sometimes people will say, like you said earlier, will say something negative to get attention. And I don't want to promote that, where if someone's saying something positive and I ignore them and I focus all my attention on these negative comments. But as you said, someone being negative probably needs they need some care.
Right.
So, and I like that approach that you talked about in your previous podcast about privately reaching out to this person and communicating in a loving way.
Hey viewers, our episode ran a little long, so we decided to split into 2 episodes. So stay tuned for the next episode to pick up where we left off, and until next time,